My brother stole my entire childhood being the golden child, but when he tried to ruin my wedding with an unauthorized proposal, I kicked him out of the venue and cut contact with my entire family. They never expected the problem daughter to set such firm boundaries. I'm 27 years old. I work in digital marketing. And honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened at my wedding like 2 months ago still has me processing a ton of shit. I'd been dragging around for years. The thing is, I always knew my parents loved my brother Raymond more than me. You know, that kind of thing you perceive as a kid, but everyone tells you you're imagining it. But when your family literally tries to sabotage your wedding so your brother can have his protagonist moment, well, there's no way to deny it anymore. You know what I mean? Let me backtrack a bit so you understand the full context. I grew up being the younger daughter. Raymond is 3 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, he was always the favorite. It's not like my parents were abusive to me or anything that extreme. But let's just say things were always different for him. When Raymond wanted to go to a super expensive private university to study engineering, my parents took out a second mortgage on their house to pay for everything, like full tuition, dorm, food, even a new car. When I graduated high school 2 years later and said I wanted to go to college, my dad basically told me there was no money left and that I'd have to look for scholarships or student loans. I ended up going to a state university, working part-time at a coffee shop, and graduating with like $35,000 in student debt. Raymond graduated without owing a single cent. But anyway, I guess I got used to it. I moved on with my life, got a good job, met Jonathan when I was 2, 3, he's 25 now, and honestly, things were going well. Jonathan is such a sweetheart, super understanding and protective, and from the beginning, he noticed how my family treated me differently. I remember perfectly the first Christmas he spent with my family. After dinner, he told me, "Hey, did you notice your parents asked Raymond about his work like 15 times but didn't even ask you about your promotion?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's how things are." I'm not even surprised anymore. The irony of all this is that despite the favoritism, I'm the one who ended up helping my parents financially. Like 3 years ago, my dad had health problems and they had to cut back on work hours, and guess who started sending them $650 a month to help with bills? Not Raymond, who supposedly made twice as much as me with his engineering job, but me. They never really thanked me. It was like they took it for granted. But whatever. They're my parents, and I didn't want to see them struggling, you know? So anyway, Jonathan and I got engaged in October last year. It was super romantic. He did it on a hike through the mountains we love, and I was on cloud 9. He'd always dreamed of a spring wedding, like April with all the flowers and perfect weather, and we started planning everything for April of this year. We put down deposits. I hired a wedding planner. We booked a beautiful venue that cost a fortune, but it was exactly what we wanted. We told my family, and everyone acted excited. My mom cried, or at least that seemed genuine at the time. My dad shook Jonathan's hand, and Raymond hugged me and said something like, "Wow, little sis, you're getting married before me." Fast forward to February, like 2 months before the wedding. My parents call me and tell me they need to talk to me urgently, to come to their house because it's important. I thought maybe something bad had happened, like health problems or something, so I went that same day after work. I arrived and all 3 of them were there. My mom, my dad, and Raymond, all sitting in the living room with serious faces. I sat down and my mom starts with, "Mija, we need to ask you a very important favor for the family." Turns out, Raymond had been dating a girl named Stephanie for 3 years, and apparently he'd been wanting to propose to her for months but hadn't found the right moment. And here comes the good part, my dad tells me. "We know your wedding is going to be beautiful and there's going to be a lot of family gathered, and we thought it would be the perfect moment for Raymond to propose to Stephanie during your reception." I just sat there processing what I'd just heard. Like, are you serious? My mom continues saying it would be so nice to have 2 celebrations in one, that we'd save money as a family, that all the relatives would already be there, and that besides Raymond doesn't have much money saved to do an elaborate proposal like Stephanie deserves. I swear I felt like they'd thrown cold water on me. I asked Raymond, "What do you think about this?" And he tells me, like super casual, "Well, yeah, I think it would be great. Plus, you guys will already have your moment at the ceremony. This would just be at the reception." My dad adds that Raymond was thinking of doing it during the speeches, that it would only take a few minutes and would be a nice family touch. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I literally felt like my chest was going to explode with rage. I told them no, absolutely not, that this was my wedding, Jonathan and my day, and that I wasn't going to allow anyone to take that moment from us. My mom immediately started with, "Hey, Mija, but he's your brother. Family should support each other, don't be selfish." Selfish? I was thinking, are you calling me selfish for not wanting my brother to steal the spotlight at my own wedding? I reminded them that I was sending them $650 a month, that I'd never asked them for a penny for the wedding, unlike when Raymond needed everything paid for his education, and that the least I expected was for them to respect my special day. Raymond got defensive and said I'd always been dramatic, that it wasn't that big a deal, that it was just a few minutes of attention. I told him that if he wanted to propose to Stephanie so badly, he could plan his own proposal at any other time, that he literally had 365 days a year to choose from, minus my wedding day. My dad tried to mediate, saying to think it over, to sleep on it. But I was already so angry that I stood up and told them something that still surprises me came out of my mouth. I told them, if Raymond tries to do anything at my wedding to propose to his girlfriend, not only am I going to kick him out of the venue, but I'm going to uninvite all of you, and also I'm going to stop sending you money immediately. I left that house shaking with rage and called Jonathan on the way. He was working, but when I told him what happened, he immediately said he was coming straight home. That night we talked for hours, and he was just as furious as me. He told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Love, your family has been using and belittling you your whole life, and if you don't set boundaries now, it's going to keep happening for the rest of your life." And he was right, completely right. The following days were absolute chaos. My mom called me 15 times a day, leaving me voice messages where she cried, saying I was destroying the family. How could I be so cruel to my brother? That I'd always been the rebel and the problematic one. Problematic me? Really? The one who worked to pay for her own college, who never asked for anything, who'd been supporting them financially for years. I ignored most of the calls, but finally answered once and told her my answer was no, that I wasn't going to change my mind, and that if they kept pressuring me, I was going to cancel their invitation to the wedding. That shut her up for 2 days. But then Raymond showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning, banging on the door like crazy. Jonathan was the one who opened it, and Raymond pushed the door trying to get in, yelling that he needed to talk to me. Jonathan, who's 6'1" and works out regularly, stopped him cold and told him to calm down or we'd call the police. I came out and Raymond was there with his face red, yelling at me that I was selfish, that I'd always been the favorite. What? That he deserved to have his moment too. I yelled back, asking him if he was completely insane, if he really believed I was the favorite when they paid for all his education and left me with $35,000 in debt. He went quiet for a second and then said, "Well, that was different. I had better career opportunities." Jonathan closed the door in his face, and we called the building manager to report that someone was causing a disturbance. Raymond finally left, but I could hear him yelling in the hallway that I was going to regret it. That night, I blocked his number because I couldn't deal with the harassment anymore. My grandmother, my dad's mom, also tried to get involved as a mediator. She called me and with her sweet grandma voice told me she understood my position, but that I should think about family unity, that Raymond was my only brother, and that these special moments should be shared. I explained the whole situation to her again, including the years of favoritism and the financial support I gave without recognition, but she just said, Mija, every family has its dynamics, but love must prevail." 3 weeks before the wedding, Raymond finally sent a message. He'd gotten my new number from who knows where, saying he was sorry, that he'd been out of line, that he wasn't going to try anything at the wedding and just wanted to be there to celebrate with me. I was skeptical, obviously, but Jonathan convinced me to give him the benefit of the doubt. I told Raymond it was okay, he could come, but that any inappropriate behavior would result in him being kicked out immediately. He said he understood perfectly. The wedding day arrived, and it was absolutely beautiful, or at least the ceremony was. I got married in a gorgeous garden with all the spring flowers Jonathan had dreamed of. The weather was perfect. My dress fit like a glove, and when Jonathan saw me walking down the aisle, he cried, which made me cry too, obviously. The ceremony was perfect. No drama. My parents were sitting there behaving like normal parents. Raymond was with Stephanie, and they both looked happy and calm. For a moment I thought, okay, maybe they did get over it. Maybe they will respect this day. The reception started amazing too. Our first dance as spouses was perfect. The food was delicious. Everyone was having fun, and I was finally relaxing and enjoying my day. It came time for the speeches. My maid of honor gave a beautiful speech that made me cry again. Jonathan's best man told funny stories that made everyone laugh. And then it was Raymond's turn. My brother stood up with the microphone, started talking about how he'd known me since we were kids, told a couple of anecdotes that were fine, and I was thinking, okay, this is good. He's behaving. But then he said something like, and since we're all here gathered celebrating love, there's something I've wanted to do for a long time. That's when I stood up abruptly, because I knew exactly what was going to happen. Raymond pulled out a little box from his pocket and turned to Stephanie, who was sitting at a nearby table with a face of total surprise. Honestly, I think she had no idea this was going to happen. And started with, Stephanie, we've been together for 3 years, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I yelled no in the middle of the room, but he kept talking like nothing. Will you marry me? Jonathan was already on his feet too and yelled at Raymond to stop immediately. My dad stood up trying to calm the situation. My mom was sitting there like frozen with her hands over her mouth, and I walked straight to where the venue coordinator was. I told him I needed my brother and my father removed from the place immediately. That this was a situation we'd anticipated, and that it had ruined my reception. The coordinator, bless him, acted super professional and called the 2 security guards the venue had available. Stephanie was crying, but not from happiness, but like from embarrassment or shock. I'm not sure which. The guards approached Raymond, who still had the ring in his hand, and asked him to leave. Raymond started yelling that I was his sister and he had a right to be there. That he'd just made a marriage proposal and what was wrong with that. My dad tried to intervene, saying we all needed to calm down and talk like family, but I was so furious I yelled at him to leave too, or we'd call the police. The guards escorted both of them outside while half the room watched the scene with faces of total shock. My mom stayed but was crying and saying someone had ruined everything. I'm not sure if she meant me or Raymond. My grandmother also stayed, but came over to tell me I'd been too harsh with my brother, that he just wanted his moment of happiness. I told her to sit down and shut up or she'd be kicked out too. Stephanie ran out after Raymond. I don't know if to console him or to yell at him. I didn't care at that moment. Jonathan hugged me and said, let's breathe. It's still our day. Let's not let this ruin it completely. I tried to pull myself together. The DJ put on music trying to normalize the atmosphere, and some guests came to support me and tell me I'd done the right thing. But honestly, the damage was already done. The rest of the reception was awkward and weird, and I spent it holding back tears of rage more than happiness. When we finally left that night to the hotel before our honeymoon trip the next day, I cried for like a full hour in Jonathan's arms. He just held me and told me over and over that he was sorry, that my family didn't deserve my love or my money. We went on our honeymoon to Costa Rica for 2 weeks, and honestly, those 2 weeks were amazing. We were able to disconnect and enjoy being newlyweds without the family drama. But when we got back, my phone exploded with messages. Raymond had left like 30 voice messages, most of them yelling about how I'd ruined his relationship. Some crying, saying I was a heartless bitch. Turns out Stephanie had broken up with him after the wedding. According to Raymond's messages, she'd told him that what he did was completely inappropriate and disrespectful, that she never would have wanted a proposal like that, and that the fact that he thought that was okay made her question his judgment completely. My mom had also left like 20 messages, some crying, saying, how could I have kicked him out like that? That he was my brother and families forgive each other. Others like angrier, saying it had been an overreaction to call security, that we could have handled it differently. My dad sent long emails trying to explain that they just wanted everyone to be happy, that Raymond was going through a difficult time and I should be more understanding. My grandmother sent an actual physical letter, yes, a real letter in the mail, of like 4 pages talking about the importance of family and forgiveness. I didn't answer any of those messages in the first week. Jonathan and I talked at length about what to do, and decided the best thing was to establish clear boundaries. I sent my parents a message telling them that what Raymond did was unforgivable, that I'd warned them multiple times what would happen if he tried anything like that, and that the consequences were deserved. I also told them I was canceling the monthly payments of $650 indefinitely, that after years of favoritism and disrespect, I was no longer going to keep being their financial safety net, while they treated Raymond like he never did anything wrong, that caused another total meltdown. My mom called crying, saying, how were they going to pay the bills? That they depended on that money, that I couldn't leave them like that. I reminded her that Raymond supposedly made more than me and that if they needed it so badly, he could start helping them. My dad sent a super angry message saying I was being vindictive and cruel, that they'd raised me and I owed them respect and support. I responded that respect was mutual and they clearly didn't respect me. Raymond kept sending messages for weeks, alternating between insulting me and begging for forgiveness. He said Stephanie was the love of his life and that I'd ruined his chance to be with her. I answered him only once, telling him he'd ruined his own relationship with his selfish actions and to stop blaming me for the consequences of his own decisions. After that, I blocked him everywhere. Phone, social media, email, everything. Like a month after returning from the honeymoon, my dad showed up at my apartment unannounced, knocked on the door on a Sunday morning. Jonathan answered again, and my dad asked to talk to me. I let him in but told him he had 5 minutes. He sat in the living room and started with a whole story about how Raymond was depressed, had lost weight, wasn't performing well at work, and it was all my fault for publicly humiliating him. I told him Raymond had humiliated himself, that I'd only protected my own special day after warning them multiple times. My dad tried the guilt card, saying a good sister would forgive. That family is forever, all that typical speech. I told him something I'd been holding in for years. I said, "You know what? My whole life, I've been the second choice in this family. It was always Raymond first. Raymond needs this. Raymond deserves that. And I was just the daughter who had to settle for the leftovers. You guys took out a second mortgage to pay for his college but told me to figure it out on my own. He's never had to give you a single penny, but I've been supporting you financially for 3 years, and you don't even thank me. And after all that, you had the nerve to ask me to give up my wedding so he could have his moment. Well, no, Dad. It's over. I'm not going to keep being the backup plan for this family." My dad went quiet for a moment. I think he'd never heard me speak so directly. Then he said something like, "We always knew. Raymond needed more support because he was more sensitive. You were always more independent." I told him that being independent didn't mean I didn't need or deserve my parents' love and support the same as him, that I'd simply learned not to expect it because I knew it wouldn't come. I asked him to leave, and he did. But before he said, I'd regret cutting my family off like this. Last week, Raymond showed up at a restaurant where Jonathan and I were having dinner with some friends. I don't know how he knew we'd be there. Maybe he saw us by coincidence, or maybe he's stalking me, which is another level of disturbing. He approached the table super aggressive and started yelling at me in front of everyone. He was saying that because of me he'd lost everything, that Stephanie wouldn't answer his calls, that my parents were struggling financially, and my grandmother was disappointed in me. I told him to leave or I'd call the manager, but he kept yelling. Jonathan stood up and got between Raymond and me, told him he needed to leave immediately. Raymond tried to push Jonathan, and that's when 2 waiters intervened. My husband didn't respond physically, like he stayed calm but firm. But Raymond was completely out of control. The waiters had to literally restrain him and remove him from the restaurant while he kept yelling that this wasn't over, that I owed him an apology, that he was going to make everyone know what kind of person I was. It was scary, honestly, to see my brother that out of control. When they finally took him away, the restaurant manager came to apologize and offered us dinner for free, but obviously we weren't hungry or in the mood to stay anymore. That night, Jonathan and I talked about getting a restraining order if Raymond kept escalating things. I hope I don't have to go that far. But the truth is, his behavior is scaring me. My mom sent me another message after the restaurant incident. Apparently, Raymond called her crying, saying I was taking things too far, that Raymond was just frustrated and I needed to forgive him. I told her that her 30-year-old son had just made a scene in a public restaurant and almost got physical with my husband, and if she didn't see a problem with that, then she needed professional help too. Now I'm in zero contact mode with Raymond and minimal contact with my parents and grandmother. I answer their basic messages like on holidays, but that's it. No more long calls, no more visits, and definitely no more financial help. Jonathan says I'm doing the right thing. That protecting our peace of mind and our marriage is what's most important, and I know he's right, but I'm not going to lie. There are days when I feel guilty. There are days when I think, should I have handled things differently? Was I too harsh? But then I remember that moment at my wedding, when Raymond pulled out that ring after I warned him multiple times not to, after promising me he wasn't going to cause problems, and the guilt disappears. What hurts me most, I guess, isn't just what happened at the wedding, but everything it represents. It represents 30 years of being the second choice, of my achievements not mattering as much as Raymond's, of having to fight for every bit of recognition while he was given everything on a silver platter. And when I finally had my moment, something I paid for myself, that I planned for months, that meant the start of my own family with the man I love, they couldn't even let me have that without trying to make Raymond the center of attention. Some relatives keep sending me occasional messages trying to convince me to forgive and forget, saying life is too short to hold grudges. And maybe they're right that life is short, but that's exactly why I'm not going to waste more time being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. Jonathan and I are starting our life together. We might have kids in a couple years, and I don't want them growing up seeing their mom, except being treated without respect by her family of origin. Stephanie sent me a message like 2 weeks ago, like out of the blue. It was super short, but basically said she was sorry about everything that happened, that she had no idea about Raymond's plans, and that if she'd known she would have told him it was completely out of line. She asked if we could talk sometime because she wanted to explain her perspective on everything. I still haven't answered her because, honestly, I don't know what I'd get out of that conversation, but at least it was kind of her to acknowledge how inappropriate the situation was. The truth is, I don't know how all this is going to end. I don't know if someday my family will understand why I did what I did, or if I'll always be the villain in their story. What I do know is that for the first time in my life, I set firm boundaries and didn't back down when they pressured me, and that has to mean something, right? Jonathan says he's proud of me, that he saw my spine grow during this whole process. He said it jokingly, but like with affection, and I guess that's what matters at the end of the day. My wedding wasn't perfect like I'd imagined it. That moment with Raymond and having to kick out, my dad definitely left a stain on what should have been the happiest day of my life. But when I look at the ceremony photos, when I remember how Jonathan looked waiting for me at the altar, when I think about our honeymoon in Costa Rica, where we could finally breathe and be happy without family drama, I realize that despite everything, I married my best friend and started my own family. And that family, the one I'm building with Jonathan, isn't going to include the kind of favoritism and disrespect that characterized the family I grew up in. So, yeah, I guess here we are. Married, generally happy, but not talking to my brother and barely maintaining contact with my parents. Sometimes, I wonder if in a few years things will change, if there'll be some kind of reconciliation or mutual understanding. But honestly, I don't see it coming unless there are real apologies and acknowledgement of all the damage they caused. And so far, all I've received are justifications, minimization of what they did, and more attempts to make me feel guilty for protecting my own special day. So as long as that doesn't change, well, things are going to stay as they are, and I'm going to keep building my life with the people who really value and respect me.